The world didn't end with fire. It didn't end with an explosion. It ended quietly. On a normal day, when humanity finally realized the truth. Not that the world was ending, but that it had been ending for a very long time. And by the time the realization reached everyone, there was nothing left to stop. This is the story of how humanity didn't miss the warning. We just waited too long to believe it. The moment the truth became undeniable didn't happen in a lab. It didn't happen in a government office. It happened everywhere at once. Crops failing in patterns that no longer recovered. Oceans warming past the point of seasonal balance. Ice that never returned, even in winter. For decades, these changes were explained away as cycles, as anomalies, as problems for the next generation. But then came the year when nothing bounced back. The year when emergency became permanent. The year when every prediction that had once sounded extreme suddenly sounded conservative. Humanity didn't wake up to the end. We woke up to the realization that the end had already started, quietly, patiently, while we were busy calling it progress. The earliest warnings weren't dramatic. They never are. They appeared as fractions of a degree, small shifts in atmospheric chemistry, marginal increases in ocean acidity, numbers that didn't feel dangerous because they weren't immediate. And that's how human psychology works. We are wired to fear sudden threats, not slow ones. A predator triggers panic. A trend triggers debate. Scientists tried to explain this. They spoke of tipping points, feedback loops, irreversible thresholds. But those words didn't translate well into daily life, because nothing felt broken yet. Cities still lit up at night. Supermarkets were still full. The weather was still familiar, just slightly less predictable each year. And so the warnings were filed away as concerns, not emergencies. Humanity didn't reject the data. We postponed its meaning.
The data suggests a stable trajectory.
Over time, denial stopped being personal. It became structural. Governments didn't ignore the problem, they delayed it. Because responding meant disruption, and disruption meant economic instability, political backlash, loss of power. Systems built to protect stability are naturally resistant to change, even when change is the only path to survival. Industries dependent on the old world funded doubt. Short-term growth was rewarded. Long-term warnings were labeled unrealistic. Every year, action was promised. Every year, it was postponed. Somewhere inside that delay was a person, a climate researcher who had spent 20 years modeling outcomes, running simulations, updating projections. Every new data set made the margin thinner. Every year moved the line closer. At first, the warnings were urgent. Then they became cautious. Not because the data changed, but because the reaction never did. Reports were acknowledged, meetings were scheduled, statements were released, and then life continued. Eventually, the researchers stopped asking when action would begin and started calculating how much damage had already been locked in. Not because hope disappeared, but because realism replaced it. That was the moment denial stopped being political and became personal. Not because leaders were evil, but because the system rewarded delay more than courage. Humanity didn't fail because it lacked intelligence. It failed because it optimized for comfort in a moment that demanded sacrifice. And while debates continued, The countdown never stopped. For a long time, humanity believed the future could always be negotiated, that every problem came with a solution if we acted fast enough. But there are systems that don't respond to speed, only to timing. In Earth's climate, scientists call these tipping points, thresholds where gradual change becomes irreversible, where feedback loops take control. Ice sheets don't melt evenly. Once they thin past a critical point, they collapse under their own weight, accelerating sea rise even if temperatures stop increasing. Forests don't burn and recover forever. Once enough trees are lost, rainfall patterns shift, turning entire ecosystems into dry grasslands that can no longer regrow. Oceans absorb heat silently for decades, and when they finally release it, weather systems don't return to normal. They reorganize, permanently. These changes don't announce themselves. They lock in quietly, while the world debates solutions that arrive too late. By the time humanity realized this, the math had already changed. Emissions could slow, damage could be managed, but reversal was no longer possible. The future had stopped being something we could shape and became something we could only endure. This was the moment the end became unavoidable. Not because the planet turned hostile, but because the systems we depended on had crossed lines that could not be uncrossed. Humanity didn't reach the point of no return with a single mistake. We reached it gradually, one delayed decision at a time.
Bring it down 20 centimeters, watch the clearance on the right.
When the
Copy that,
realization
moving out.
finally spread, it didn't arrive as panic. It arrived as disbelief. Headlines changed
Copy that, coming
tone
up
overnight. Emergency summits replaced debates. Governments declared timelines instead of targets. For the first time in decades, humanity moved in the same direction. Fast, unified, desperate. Entire industries were dismantled in months. Energy systems were restructured. Cities redesigned themselves around survival instead of convenience. And for a brief moment, it felt like we had done it. Carbon levels
The trends are
slowed.
holding steady.
Some
We can begin
ecosystems
the
stabilized.
de-escalation protocol
Innovation accelerated faster than ever before. But beneath the momentum, scientists were already seeing the limits. The curves didn't reverse. They flattened. The disasters didn't stop. They became predictable. Humanity had finally learned how to fight the fire. But the building had already collapsed. The awakening came with a painful truth. Action can reduce suffering, but it cannot undo consequences already locked into the system. Hope didn't disappear in this era. It simply changed shape. After the realization, life didn't end. It narrowed. Cities learned how to retreat instead of expand. Coastal communities moved inland, not as refugees, but as planners of a smaller future. Food systems shifted from abundance to reliability. Seasons were no longer trusted. Parents stopped promising their children that everything would be okay and started teaching them how to adapt. Education changed. Progress was no longer measured by growth, but by resilience. People learned to value stability over scale, repair over replacement, cooperation over speed. The future was no longer imagined in centuries. It was imagined in decades, sometimes in years. And yet, humanity didn't disappear. It adjusted, not because it was heroic, but because survival has always been our quiet talent. The tragedy wasn't that the world ended. The tragedy was that it continued, changed forever, after we finally understood what we had lost.
The jungle canopy is home to
Looking back,
millions of species,
the question was
many
never,
yet
why
undiscovered.
didn't we know? We did. The real question was, why didn't we act when we still had time? Part of the answer lies in human psychology. We are excellent at reacting to danger, but poor at responding to inevitability. A fire demands action. A slow collapse invites negotiation. Another part lies in how progress shaped us. For centuries, growth meant success. Expansion meant security. Convenience meant advancement. We built systems that rewarded speed, not restraint. Comfort, not caution. And when the warning signs appeared, they didn't look like threats. They looked like trade-offs. Sacrifice now, or comfort a little longer. Humanity chose comfort, not because it was foolish, but because it felt normal. The future was always described as something distant, and distance makes consequences feel negotiable. By the time the future arrived, it no longer asked for permission. We didn't wait because we were ignorant. We waited because the world we were asked to save looked exactly like the one we were still living in. In the end, the world didn't end with chaos. It ended with understanding. Humanity finally saw the full picture, not as a warning, but as a consequence. The realization came too late to change the outcome, but not too late to change how we remembered ourselves. We learned that knowledge alone doesn't save civilizations. Timing does. Courage does. The willingness to act before certainty feels comfortable. The end wasn't caused by one mistake. It was built patiently, decision by decision, delay by delay, while the world continued to function just well enough to make urgency feel unnecessary. And maybe that is the most unsettling truth of all, that the end of the world didn't look like an ending. It looked like life, continuing as usual until it couldn't anymore.